So I was watching the Breakdown Rugby show on New Zealand television yesterday, and I heard Justin Marshall, Jeff Wilson and Muliaina make a few comments that I thought, wow, people on my channel are going to have something to say about that. So I'm going to make a video about it today so we can have a respectful disagreement with our friends down in New Zealand. So let's get on to the video right now. G'day and welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. If you haven't been here before, my name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan and I'm living in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Yes, making my channel from over here, where I've spent the last 3 years enjoying Mexican life and culture. Now in today's video I'm going to talk about the show that was the Breakdown Rugby show in New Zealand yesterday, and they were talking about the actual French tour that kicks off this weekend in Dunedin. The All Blacks playing France in the first of a 3 test match series. And there's a lot of debate going on in New Zealand at the moment about the French sending a B team down to New Zealand. Now, if you're not aware of the facts are the French local competition just finished last weekend, where most of their top players were playing, and to expect those players to get on a plane 25 or 30 hours to New Zealand and then take on the All Blacks next weekend was always going to be a bit of an ask. But on top of that, I think Fabien Galthié has got things sorted out the right way, and I'm going to explain in this video why I think that's the case. Now, there's no doubt about it, the international rugby schedules are getting more and more packed, a lot of demands on players as we push forward in another World Cup cycle towards Australia in 2027. So it's a good opportunity, I think, for a lot of teams to experiment with players. And if you've been watching my videos over the last 12 months, you've been hearing me talk about the All Blacks in particular and how I feel they've got to give some of the fringe players more opportunities to play in the All Black games, and that didn't happen last year. One of the players that I brought up on a number of occasions was Billy Proctor, who was sitting most of the time on the sidelines for the All Blacks in 2024. And I thought this was a wrong decision by Scott Robertson and his selection crew of the All Blacks. Now, in this episode of the Breakdown yesterday in New Zealand, it was very interesting to hear Jeff Wilson in particular in the beginning of the show talk about that actual fact, how Billy Proctor sat on the sidelines for a long period of time last year and didn't get an opportunity. And he actually has picked Billy Proctor in his team to play against France in the first test in Dunedin this coming weekend. And then as the show went on, the Breakdown show went on, these same people talked about how it wasn't right that Fabien Galthié is taking a B team of the French players to New Zealand this year. Now, when we talk about B teams, let me just explain in this particular occasion what the French team looks like that's travelling to New Zealand. 49% of the players are uncapped for France, so they're coming in very, very green indeed, and 9.5 caps is the average number of caps for the remaining players. So it is a very inexperienced side. But is that a problem? I don't think it is at all, and I want to actually applaud Fabien Galthié and the French Rugby Union for making this decision, because I think between Rugby World Cups we need to see more coaches experimenting, building the depth of their overall squads and seeing what talent is available. And I think this is in Galthié and the French Union's benefit to actually take a young team to New Zealand, just like they did to Argentina last year, and I'm sure they're going to perform very, very well. If you've been watching sport over the years, you will know that the underdog label is something that grows players and athletes tremendously, and we often see the underdogs performing way better than anybody had expected. And I'm suggesting that that's what we're going to see from this French group down in New Zealand over the next 3 test matches against the All Blacks. Whenever you put on a French rugby jersey, if you're a French person and you go and represent your nation, there's a lot of pride attached to that. The French rugby team and the French outfit today is very different to what it was 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, when people like Justin Marshall, Muliaina and Jeff Wilson were playing the game. And I'm sure that these players have been prepared and they're highly motivated to go down to New Zealand as underdogs and to try and actually upset the New Zealand All Blacks at home. And what a feat that would be. The French are unpredictable and spontaneous at their very best, and this is part of the DNA of their rugby, and it's a reason I love French rugby and watching the French team play. And it doesn't matter who pulls on that French jersey, you are going to get flair and skills at a very high level, and they're going to play for the 80 minutes of the game. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what this young French group can do in New Zealand, and I'm sure a lot of the New Zealand public and the New Zealand pundits in the rugby world are going to be surprised at what happens in Dunedin next Saturday, because I think the French team are going to come out with all guns a-blazing. They've got people like Guy Ficou there, Villery on the wing as well, so they have got some experience. They've got some strong heads there that can guide these young players around, and I'm sure these young French players are going to come out there and give us an absolute spectacle against the All Blacks on Saturday in Dunedin. So yes, on this occasion, Justin Marshall, Mills Muliaina and Jeff Wilson, I totally disagree with you. I don't think the French Rugby Union is disrespecting the All Blacks and the New Zealand public at all. I think Fabien Galthié is using this opportunity between Rugby World Cups to grow the depth of his squad, to allow his players that have played the French season to recuperate and to get ready for the Northern Tours that will take place later on this year. And I'm sure, and this is not just about France, I would love to see the other nations doing exactly the same thing between Rugby World Cups. We're seeing it with the smaller teams, or the smaller nations I should say. They're giving teams the opportunity. We know that Rassie Erasmus is great at experimenting, and I would expect him to experiment with a lot of players throughout the season. I think the Springboks are so strong, they're still going to be able to win their games even when they are experimenting. But for the likes of France, the likes of Japan, Australia, Fiji, Wales, England, Ireland, Wales and Scotland, I'd like to see them all putting a lot more fringe players into their squads for the next 2 years, so that their coaches can see the amount of talent that they've got available heading into the Rugby World Cup. You know, we're not going to be talking about this French series when it comes 2027 and the Rugby World Cup, but we are going to see the benefits of this French team travelling to New Zealand with a young squad when Fabien Galthié chooses that French squad to go to the Rugby World Cup in Australia in 2027. He's going to have a lot more depth available of those players who have played across and against some of the top nations in the world. So I think it's a very good move indeed. Now, of course, there's lots of opinions across the rugby world on this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think it's right for the French to be sending a lesser experienced team down to New Zealand for this 3-match test series against the All Blacks? Or would you like to see the top French players taking on the top All Black team in New Zealand as part of this tour? I'd really like to hear your views in the comments. Now, there's so many things that go into these kinds of decisions, I'm sure, and it's got to do with logistics, it's got to do with injuries, it's got to do with player welfare, both mental and physical. So we shouldn't just look at this as a very shallow topic to talk about in terms of, oh, the French are snubbing New Zealand and they're disrespecting the Kiwis and the Kiwi public. That's not the case at all. I think when you sit down and you've got a group of rugby players that can represent your nation, you've got to take all those things into account. And I think the French are going to be better off by sending this young squad down to New Zealand, giving them this type of experience. There's nothing like playing the Kiwis at home in New Zealand in front of a New Zealand crowd. And every one of these players that go down to New Zealand for France during this tour are going to come back better, stronger and better equipped players, I believe, for their future careers. And as a result of that, you can see France growing the depth of their squad as we head towards the 2027 Rugby World Cup. I'm going to be covering the 3 test matches that kick off this weekend in Dunedin between the All Blacks and the French team. We've got the first game in Dunedin, we've got the second game in Wellington, then the third game is going to be played in Hamilton in the Waikato of New Zealand. Looking forward to that test match. So make sure you come here for more content as we build up towards that series. I'm going to be giving you my team selection choices this week. We'll then confirm what Razor Robertson puts out, and I'll give you my game preview. And then after the game, I'll give you my post-game analysis show, going into a lot of detail about the game and what I think were the winners and losers of that first game in Dunedin. Don't forget, South Africa kick off their campaign against Italy in a 2-match series starting off in South Africa this weekend as well. So there's a huge amount of international rugby going on at the moment. Don't forget, we've also got the Lions Tour of Australia happening at the moment. They've got a game coming up this week against the Queensland Reds in Brisbane. That's going to be an interesting encounter as they start to build towards their 3-test match series against the Australian Wallabies. I'm going to be covering as much of it as I can here on my channel, so hit the subscribe button, give this video one of these things, and tell all your mates there's a Kiwi guy in Mexico making videos about rugby, and see how many more people we can get connected to this community. Okay, that's it for this video. I'll be back again soon with some additional content. Until then, stay safe, stay well everyone, keep enjoying your rugby across the world, and it's time to say adios from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Bye for now.